Tech and machinery not the only things you'll find here at the Nebraska Ag Expo. You can also find some marketing advice. In fact, we were joined in the middle of the week by one of the exhibitors, that is Doug Simon with Tredas. Doug, it's always good to see you, especially here. We got equipment behind us, and there's been some optimism as part of the Nebraska Ag Expo because on Tuesday there was a favorable report. We saw the grains rally a little bit. Let's talk about the WASD and what came out.
You bet. Well, the November one, we had some cut in the bean yields, and this report they don't do anything to the yields, but they did increase demand, increased the exports by 150 million bushel, and that was great. The ethanol side, they increased that by 50 million bushels, so a total of 200 million bushels they added to demand, which is good. So that reduced our ending stocks down to about where we were last year. So that was really positive. We had a good day in the corn market yesterday on Tuesday, and Monday we have as well, and we ended the week, fairly favorably. So we've had a nice move going back up. The March corn's right around 450. So we were talking about that earlier, and we've had a nice rally in that. The bean balance sheet, though, they didn't change anything domestically. Made some minor changes on the international side of it, but that's one of the more significant moves on a or a corn balance sheet in quite a while, which was good.
How much stock do you take in these reports? The WASD ends with the word or the letter E for estimates. These are USDA's projections. So how much are you paying attention to these numbers?
Well, I've always believed USDA is the biggest and best group that's out there, and they are making estimates, but it's a hard job trying to keep track of all the numbers, but I truly think they try to do a very good job and put their best estimates forward. But for example, trying to keep track of the exports of corn, we've actually had a very good fourth quarter of the crop marketing year during the late summer. Mm-hmm. We exported a lot of corn, and we've had very good exports now, and now they're projecting going forward here even better exports. Now that we call a little bit into question because are people front loading these loadings or these exports because of potential trade wars? And also down the road, if we have a decent crop in Brazil, the basis levels on Brazil on soybeans are currently pretty weak. And if they have a decent crop down there again, their basis levels always plummet at harvest because they don't have as much storage. And when they have a good crop, they tend to get into the export seat. So last year, Brazil was the best exporter of corn. The U.S. is going to recapture that lead. But if they have a big crop and with the basis deficit or being such a discount to the U.S., they could get back into the driver's seat on that. So I'm not maybe as optimistic as what USDA is saying on the exports, but it was nice to see them bump up and maybe catch up with where they should be.
Yeah, as I mentioned, the grain markets liked it. They responded a little bit with a little bit of a rally, but let's talk about the past month or so, where you're seeing corn and soybean prices.
Well, if you look at the harvest low we had in August, it was at 385 on the December futures, and even though we've rolled from the Dece into the March, the Dece is still trading around 442. So we've had a 53 cent rally from that harvest low that we put in, and with the March corn at 450, the springtime price last year was 466. So it's not $5 like it was a year ago today, but it certainly had a nice rally and that strength. And so our group, we like to not necessarily have to worry about the minutia of the balance sheet, but what's the price action doing? And we've had a good rally that when you get strength, you need to be able to take advantage of that. And on the soybean side of it, we're right at Jan beans are at 997 and March beans are at 1003. So they're right on either side of 10, and they're actually holding in there fairly well, considering the fears about trade. And one of the things that President-elect Trump did last week is one of his appointees was maybe a little more favorable to the biofuels, and so that gave the price of some levity last week, and then the report yesterday was really good too.
Calm the waters a little bit.
Calm the waters, yes.
Well, Doug, one of the questions I heard from one of the attendees here at the Nebraska Ag Expo had to do with basis and what basis might do as we get into early 2025. Did you bring your crystal ball? Can you answer that question for us?
Well, the basis levels 3 years ago were really strong because of the deficits of production in Kansas. There was a lot of corn moving out of southern Nebraska the last 3 years, and it tailed off this last year at harvest time or just prior to harvest. It wasn't as strong as what it was 3 years ago, but the problem now is that they had a decent crop down there, and so we're not moving corn out of southern Nebraska down into those Kansas feedlot markets. You've also got a situation where feeders are pretty high relative to fats and the cost of gains, and so we're not seeing the movement of corn and supporting our basis levels. The other aspect is what's going on the rail, because in Nebraska you compete to the ethanol plants, you go to the rail, and you go to the feedlots. And basis levels that those rail loaders have backed off to. So the basis levels, even though the futures have rallied, the thing that concerns me is that we're not seeing the strength in the basis that's trying to pull it into these different. The basis is what directs it into an ethanol plant or into the feedlot or onto the rail. And I don't see the competition that we've seen a month ago. It was a lot better, but versus where we were last year, not as much. Typically in this time frame in December, as you go into Christmas, the basis usually spiking to get corn to come in. So it's feeling weak on basis right now relative. In fact, when we rolled through from Dees to the March, the basis was like 10 over the Dees, and now it's 10 under the March. So we've lost about 10 cents in actual relative price because of that wider basis.
Well, let's keep your crystal ball out. Get your thoughts on corn in particular. You think we'll see $5 corn in the first 6 months of 2025?
That's the other thing that's struggling when you look at the Dees, for 450 on the March, and the Dees 25 is around 442. We've gone back into the 430s, and we had a high about 2 months ago at 452. So we flattened the kind of price curve. We haven't been able to keep that Dees 25 going up or with the same rate that the Dees 24 went up. So I would like to. It's going to require some type of weather problem in Brazil, or more problems in the U.S. I mean, we're in a situation where the La Nina was supposed to go away. It's actually kind of been rebuilding. So beans are maybe getting a little bit of support too. If you look at we've had rain in Brazil, but maybe not quite as, it's been decent, but maybe not as abundant as overall as people are thinking. And that'll be a question here if it gets dry, we'll go to $5. But right now it looks like, we've had some decent rain here in November. They're having rain in Brazil. It's going to take, a pretty big change in the weather. So I'm not really good at predicting the weather. So,
well, stay tuned. See what happens. So,
you bet.
Doug, appreciate you joining us here at the Nebraska Ag Expo.
You bet. Thanks for having me. My pleasure.